A vintage 1950s propeller airplane, a Douglas DC-4, taking off from a busy New York airport on a sunny summer morning. The plane has Pan American World Airways livery and Flight 914 written near the cockpit. The style should be photorealistic, capturing the optimistic mood of the 1950s. A vintage 1950s Douglas DC-4 airplane landing at a modern 1990s airport in Caracas, Venezuela. The airport has modern jetways and airliners. The old propeller plane looks completely out of place. The scene should be cinematic, dramatic, with a cloudy sky reflecting confusion and mystery. Security vehicles are rushing towards the plane. An elderly woman and man, now in their 80s, embracing a young man in a 1950s pilot uniform who looks exactly 35 years younger. The setting is a modern 1990s airport lobby. The elderly couple has tears in their eyes and the young pilot looks confused. The emotional contrast of age and time is the main focus. Photorealistic, emotional lighting. Old plane and new airport contrast. A close-up shot of a rusty, dusty, but completely intact 1950s Douglas DC-4 airplane cockpit. Through the window, a blurry, ultramodern 1990s airport terminal is visible. The contrast between the old analog instruments inside and the modern digital world outside is stark. High detail, surreal atmosphere. A vintage 1950s air traffic control radar screen with green blips. One blip is slowly fading away from the screen as if vanishing into thin air. The room is dark and filled with smoke with a lone air traffic controller in a 1950s uniform staring at the screen in confusion. The atmosphere is eerie and mysterious. Cinematic lighting, high detail. The time vortex, time portal. A vintage Douglas DC-4 airplane flying through a swirling, colorful vortex in the sky. The vortex looks like a tunnel of light and clouds with clock faces and numbers floating around it. The plane is halfway through with its front part in the modern era and the back part still in the 1950s. Surreal, fantasy art style, vibrant colors. Family reunion, emotional moment. A young man in a 1950s pilot uniform hugging his elderly mother, who is now in her 80s, at a modern 1990s airport. Tears are streaming down the mother's face and she is holding her son's face in her hands. In the background, other passengers from Flight 914 are reuniting with their aged families. The contrast between the young passengers and their old relatives is poignant. Photorealistic, emotional, warm lighting. Investigation agency, secret file. A top-secret government investigation room. On a large metal table lies an old flight logbook open to page showing, Flight 914, July 2, 1955. Around the table, serious-looking agents in 1990s suits are examining vintage luggage, 1950s newspapers and old identification cards found with the passengers. A single bright light hangs over the table, creating dramatic shadows. Dark, mysterious, cinematic. News of return newspaper headline. A close-up of a 1990s newspaper with a bold headline. Flight 914 RETURNS after 35 years, PSSNGRS still young. The newspaper is being held by shaky, aged hands. In the background, slightly blurred, is a vintage 1990s television showing the same breaking news with a live report from the airport. Hyper-realistic, fine texture of the newspaper paper and TV static.